Hey, what's up, YouTubers? It's me again, Brian, aka Gamer55551, and I am back with a video game review for this one. And for this review, we're going to be taking a look at Fire Emblem Warriors for the Nintendo Switch. Also available I do want to point out that this is the Switch version I'll be reviewing. Also available on the Nintendo 3DS as well. And if you're interested in any of the gameplay footage, I'll have a link in the description of me playing the game, along with an unboxing of the special edition that also came out as well. I will say that ever since Hyrule Warriors came out and became sort of a fan favorite and a hit with fans, though, there has been talks about what other Nintendo game could take advantage of basically the Warrior formula. Many have spoke about the idea of a Mario Warriors game. How that would work is beyond me, but hey, I'm not against the idea of a Mario Warriors game. So when they announced the next entry into the Nintendo Warriors game, it's like like to refer to it as the Fire Emblem one. It was sort of interesting, though, especially when they showed off early footage of it when they did the Fire Emblem Direct, when they announced a whole bunch of Fire Emblem games. Fire Emblem Heroes, though, fun mobile game, though. I will say that it's a fun mobile game, though. Fire Emblem Echoes for the Nintendo 3DS. An unannounced Fire Emblem game that will be coming to the Nintendo Switch supposedly sometime next year. Whether it's an official announcement or whether we'll actually see the game be released that year remains to be seen. Hope it's the latter, but we'll have to wait and see. And then, of course, Fire Emblem Warriors came out. One could argue, say this is sort of the year for Fire Emblem in general, though. And so, how does Fire Emblem Warrior fit, though? Does it overtake Hyrule Warriors in any way? Well, after investing a couple hours into the game and playing it for a bit, I will say this. Even though I'm not a huge Fire Emblem fan, though, I like the series more than the Zelda series, though. I will say this new entry in the Nintendo Warriors games, as I like to refer to it, Fire Emblem Warriors, in my opinion, edges out Hyrule Warriors, but just a little bit, though. But I still think it's an enjoyable and fun Warriors game, nevertheless. So why don't we get started with the pros and cons? Let me get my notes out. Where did I put those notes? Oh, there it is, right behind. There we go. Alright, so we'll get started with the pros and cons. We'll start first with the pros. First of all, visually speaking, the game actually looks really good. Again, I'm basing this off the Switch version, though. I know Warriors games visually isn't anything spectacular. It's not awful looking, but it isn't really anything great. That said, I do think visually this one looks really good. It's a cut above other Warriors games that I've seen. I like that he went with sort of a little bit of a cel-shaded look to a certain degree. I do think it looks a little bit better than Hyrule Warriors did, or at least the Wii version for that matter. The Wii U version, what I mean, though. But, and I also like, and this is something interesting that they put in as well, is that you could choose to run the game either in quality or performance. If you choose quality, you run the game at 1080p 30 frames per second. If you choose performance, you'll run the game at 720p 60 frames per second. This is when the game is in console mode in general. And while I would have loved to see the game run at 1080p 60 frames per second, I'm glad that they at least added this option. This is very similar to another game Koei Tecmo put out earlier this year for the PS4. I believe it's called Noih. I think it's Noih. Pardon me if I'm spelling the name wrong. But either way, I like that they gave you this option, though. For my personal taste, I went with performance, though. As much as I would love to see this game run at 1080p 60 frames per second, if I had to choose resolution or frame rate, I would go with the frame rate. I just think running the game at 60 frames per second is better than running the game at 30 frames per second. Not that it's unplayable at 30 frames per second, it still is good, but I personally would go with the 60 frames per second. But again, that's my take, though. Okay, the next one I want to talk about is that the game borrows certain elements from the Fire Emblem series. Much like what Hyrule Warriors did to a certain degree, this one sort of takes it a little bit step above, as there is a bit more strategy to it. First off, you do have when you hit the pause button when you're in the level and all, you could technically send any of your guys to attack another fighter or anything like that. This is basically an improvement over what was in Hyrule Warriors Legends, where although you can move your character to another area of the map, it didn't feel like you couldn't really have them attack the other enemies or not, compared to how this is done in Hyrule Warriors though. One element they did bring over is that if you move another character to another part of the map, you can also take control of that character. So there's no constant going from one end to the map to the other. If the other character's there, you can take control of that character as well. So I like how they took that element. Plus, what's also interesting is that they also use what's the weapon wheel, which is known in the Fire Emblem series. And correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe it goes sword beats axe, axe beats spears, spears beats sword. So, for example, if you use an axe character against a sword, someone with a sword, you're going to be fighting that character for a long time. Maybe, I've heard 10 minutes, maybe longer, because, again, the sword is more powerful than the axe, at least in the game. However, if you have an axe character take on someone with a spear, then you'll be able to defeat that enemy quicker than you would if you took on an enemy with a sword. So it adds a little bit of strategy. You sort of have to pit certain fighters against another fighter, so you gotta have to keep that in mind. If you pit, like, say, and again this is an example, an axe character against a spear character, you'll see your character with an arrow going up and their character with an arrow going down. That means that your weapon is more powerful than that character's weapon, and vice versa. If you pit, like, say, an axe character against a sword, the AI character's arrow will be up and your character's arrow will be down, which means the enemy's character's weapon is more powerful than your character's weapon. So it adds a little bit of strategy to it, and I kind of like this approach though. And it would be interesting to see something like that similar in maybe future Warriors games in general. So I like the fact that they added a little bit of more elements from the Fire Emblem series and added in. It adds a bit of strategy though. And last but not least, I will say history mode is fun. To me, history mode is kind of like what adventure mode was. You take on certain enemies, go into certain parts of the map, you take on a certain amount of enemies. Sometimes it's defeat a certain amount of enemies within a time limit. Sometimes it's something else. So they're like smaller battles in a way. And they sort of like, if you don't want to go through the full, story mode and battle and all. So for me, overall, history mode is fun. It's like adventure mode though, but I do enjoy this mode as well. So good on the history mode. Okay, we're going to take a bit of a break, and when we come back, we're going to get to the cons of what I don't like about Fire Emblem Warriors. So we'll take a bit of a break, and we will be right back. Okay, and we are back with part 2 of our review of the Switch version of Fire Emblem Warriors for the Nintendo Switch. Again, also on Nintendo 3DS as well. So now that I gave you the pros, why don't we get started with the cons? So with the cons though, I'll start with the first one. The first one I want to point out is that for those who play the game undocked, in tablet or portable mode, the game runs at 720p, which isn't surprising considering that's the output when the game is that's the output where the majority of games when undocked runs at. But the game does, however, the frame rate does drop at 30 frames per second. Again, it isn't terrible. It doesn't make the game unplayable by any chance, but I will admit it is kind of a bit of a disappointment considering the fact that when docked, the game runs at 720p at 60 frames per second. And I would have liked to see this game run at 60 frames per second, regardless of whether it was docked or undocked. So, again, I'm not losing sleep over it. It's not terrible. It doesn't make the game unplayable. It is just unfortunate. At least that's how I look at it, though. The next one I want to point out is the cast of characters. And while I certainly did not have an issue with the cast of characters, though, I really didn't get into the Fire Emblem series until around the Awakening, Birthright type of games, though. Most of the cast of characters are from Awakening, Birthrights, and Echoes, at least based on my time with the game, though. That might not appeal to a whole lot of people, as some people are upset that there's no Ike or Roy in it, from like the classic Fire Emblems series, though. I've seen some base their review on that, which I think is a little bit pushing it a little bit too far, though. So, I don't have an issue with the characters, but I can understand that it may not appeal to everyone, though. Another thing I want to point out with the cons as well is that some of the characters, I think, ride the Pegasus, the flying horse, though, which can be difficult to control. It's not like you can't control them, but there are times when they can be difficult to control in terms of attacking and so on, compared to when a character is riding on horseback, like Frederick, or when character's not riding on a horse at all. So it's not unplayable, but they're not unplayable. They're just difficult to control sometimes, though. But overall, I didn't have an issue with the cast of characters, but there are some who do have a problem with the cast of characters, who prefer, like the really old school Fire Emblem characters. Maybe they'll release them on a DLC, and a future DLC in general, although I've heard some may not appear assuming they ever do a sequel and so on. But we'll see. But overall, I don't have an issue with the cast of characters that they have right now. Others might have an issue with them. And last but not least, though, I do want to point out that the voice acting is tolerable. It's not awful, but it can get a little annoying sometimes, especially when you go through, like the main menu and all that stuff. There are times when the game says, make sure to take a break every now and then, which is a novel idea, of doing that. But then after hearing it so many times, it can get annoying after a while. Luckily, you can mute it if you want to. So, but to me, I didn't find the voice acting annoying, as annoying as some people said. It's tolerable, but it can be annoying to some people. Also, I want to point out is that the story in the game is good, but if I had to choose which is better, I have to say Hyrule Warriors story is better than the Fire Emblem Warriors game. Some of it is because maybe I'm not a huge Fire Emblem Warrior fan as I am with the Zelda series. Some of it is that as well. But I wasn't disappointed with the story, but I just feel that Hyrule Warriors had a better one. At least that's my take. Alright, let me put this out here. Overall, Fire Emblem Warriors is still a fun game, nevertheless. It is still a Warriors game no matter how you look at it. There's nothing that's going to change about it. But it's a Warriors game that takes certain elements from the Fire Emblem series and adds something to make it a bit more refreshing and then making, the traditional Warriors games, which sometimes, Warrior games are hit and miss to some people, though. Visually, the game still looks nice, though, and gameplay-wise, still holds up with elements of the series as well. Story may not appeal to a lot of people, and like I said, some of it could be I'm not a huge Fire Emblem fan compared to I am with the Zelda series, but I still enjoy the game. And as the first Warriors games on the Nintendo Switch, it is fun, and I would be open to seeing more Warriors games down the road. Maybe a sequel to Fire Emblem Warriors or Hyrule Warriors. Maybe that Mario Warriors game that some people would like to see. Hell, I'll be open to, say, like a Metroid Warriors or a Donkey Kong Warriors game as well. It sounds weird, I will admit, but I would be open to seeing more of these Nintendo-type Warrior games. Oh, and also maybe a Xenoblade Warriors game. That would be awesome as well. But overall, fun game. Plus, it will also keep you occupied until the mainline Fire Emblem game comes out. Hopefully by next year, but we'll have to wait and see. Until then, I enjoy this. I enjoy some of the Warriors games, and if you like the Hyrule Warriors games, then you'll probably enjoy the Fire Emblem Warriors game. I do believe it edges out Hyrule Warriors just a little bit thanks to some of the improved gameplay mechanics, though. But as far as story goes, like I said, it's good, but I prefer the Hyrule Warriors story than the Fire Emblem one. Okay, this concludes this video review of Fire Emblem Warriors for the Nintendo Switch. And again, these are my opinion, but what are yours? Have you picked up Fire Emblem Warriors yet? Have you picked that up before Mario Odyssey? Before you picked up Mario Odyssey, assuming you got that? Has this consumed your time? Has Mario Odyssey consumed your time as well? How are you enjoying the game? Are you not enjoying the game? Do you agree with what I said in this video? Do you disagree? Do you have a difference of opinion? As always, sound off on the comment section below. Let me know what you think. I hope you hit that like button. I would appreciate it. And I hope you do subscribe to my YouTube channel. Also, feel free to share this video if you want to. And feel free to donate to my channel if you like. You could do it through PayPal Me or Patreon. Links will be in the description of this video. And I will see you again next time when I do another video. Hopefully that will be soon. Until then, from Southern California, I wish you all a good day then. Bye!